a sense of community when you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Small Talk. I just have to quickly show a stand up because I want to show you my T-shirt because I think it's so cool. It's Tweety Bird, my Tweety Bird T-shirt. So my guest today, I'm really pleased to welcome him on the show. It's the first time I've interviewed him, and his name is Farhan Papin. Papin?
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, I see by your accent that you're probably not here from Chilliwack originally.
I am not from Chilliwack originally. I think you can say that very safely. Yeah, I'm from Pakistan, also in Pakistan from the northern parts of Pakistan. So it is the area that's close to the Himalayas and the Hindu Kush, that area.
Okay.
And it's the city I'm from is called Peshawar. It's a very historic city. It used to be a stop for a lot of the caravans that used to go on the Silk Road.
Right.
So the city has an old tradition of tea drinking together. And so there used to be these inns where you have on the first floor you have rooms for people to stay, and then on the ground floor you have like the usual old design where on the ground floor you have shops and stuff. And there's a lot of these tea shops there, and it's usually traditionally it has been green tea. But then when the British came into that area, they also brought with them the tradition of drinking milk tea. So now that's a big thing there. But anyway, sorry, I digressed a little bit, but yeah, that's
fine.
Yeah. Born. Yeah.
So when did you come, and what brought you to Canada?
Well, actually, so it's interesting because I didn't think I was gonna end up in Canada. I hopped around a bit. I did my education in Pakistan until bachelor's in engineering. And after that, I wanted to do higher education. So I went to Sweden for taking my master's degree. And this I did in a university called Kungliga Tekniska Högskolan, which is the Royal Institute of Technology, Stockholm, which is the capital city. And I did my master's there, and it was a funny time because it was when I graduated, it was right at the time of the economic meltdown. It's 2009, 2010 time. And so for any fresh graduate, it was very difficult to find jobs. But somehow I found a job in a very small company in Germany. So then I moved to Germany for a bit. I worked there for a year and a half. And then the economic situation got to the company. It was a very small company, so they had to let go a lot of people, and I was one of them. I mean, in total there were 13 people, and they let go 6. So, but then during that time, I was when I started my first year in studies, I kind of started missing the learning part of education and academia. I thought, why don't I go for a PhD? And so I started looking, and a friend of mine who was at that time working in a research lab in Tokyo, in Japan. So I applied over there. I got an opportunity to go and work with a really famous professor in my field of studies. Yeah. So I ended up in Japan. And interestingly, when I got there, they had so that was like right at the end of the 2010. And in 2011, in the start, they had their big earthquake and the Fukushima nuclear disaster. And so it was a very tough beginning for me in Japan when I got there. It was very scary. But I stuck it out and persevered and finished my PhD there, worked for a bit. And that's when I started, when I was almost done with my PhD, I met my wife, and she is from Canada. And so I gave you a very long answer to your very short question. But the reason I ended up in Canada is because I met my wife, and she's from Canada, and she actually moved with me to Japan for 2 years. But by end of 2017, when we started expecting our first, it was quite clear to both of us that the work-life balance in the Japanese work culture wasn't ideal for raising kids. And so eventually we decided, okay, let's move to Canada. And when I moved to Canada on Christmas Day 2017, we landed in Toronto.
Right.
It was 11 degrees in Tokyo when we left. When we landed in Toronto, it was minus 25. So I started to kind of suspect a pattern appearing that every city I go to is not very happy to have me. And it was even more reinforced when I moved to Chilliwack, and all of a sudden they had floods.
Oh my gosh. So it's all your fault, is what you're saying.
Yeah. But you know what, where you see blame, I see a business opportunity. Because I've decided this really cunning business plan where I could just phone different cities and say, hey, I'm not going to move to your city if I see this much in my account tomorrow. So I think I can live happily in Chilliwack for a bit if that takes off.
Very good. You know, it's interesting because a lot of the places that I've worked for in the past closed shortly after I left.
Okay.
Oh no, was I the catalyst that caused them to close? It's kind of funny.
At least you had a positive impact, so that's good.
Yeah, I guess so. Or if you can call it that. Now, just out of curiosity, do many young people from Pakistan go to other countries for further education?
So yes, I would say that. I think because there's in general, when we look at the economy in Pakistan, it's usually not based on high tech. So there's a lot of industry for agriculture related fields, and then there's for garments and fabrics, and then there's like sports goods, but a lot of it is focused on skills that you can get immediately after high school, so kind of trades related. Whereas when it comes to higher education, a lot of the times people would go abroad and see if they can find an opportunity to have higher education, and then also work in the different markets all over the world. And it's because and another aspect about Pakistan is that education is not like, there is public education, but it's not very good at all. So most of the time people have to go for private education, which is expensive.
Yeah.
But it's also very it's a necessity for a lot of parents. So a lot of parents will sacrifice a lot of their comforts, and my parents are a big example of that as well.
Right.
That they would sacrifice a lot of their comforts so that their kids can get a good education.
Right.
And then and it is also kind of sad in a sense that once you do get all that education, and eventually you kind of fly away, you leave the nest, but then if your parents are still back home in Pakistan, for instance, they start to have they're very lonely, and then like all the kids are out, and so but then you have been educated throughout your life to be in a certain market, and then it becomes very difficult to make that transition to go back and find something that you can make a living with. Some people will try it. There's recently been some entrepreneurial effort going on. I have seen a few of my friends who have gone back and started their own ventures, or brought in work from kind of getting or starting up satellite offices for some international companies.
Very good.
But it is still not enough. And then at the same time, being in a very sensitive geopolitical location, Pakistan goes through its cycles of turmoil, and especially political. given that there is I mean, I don't know how aware your viewers are from the geopolitical aspects of Pakistan, but it's situated in a spot where on one side it has a really big economic power in China, on the other side a big economic power in India, and then just above it is Afghanistan, which is close next to Russia. And so there has been this, like in the past century, there has been this political actors there, which makes it very difficult for the country to go in a direction without being meddled in from outside. So it's a very sensitive, very difficult kind of situation that people find themselves in there. But yeah, I would imagine that a few generations from now, there would be people that would find some stability when it comes to actually going for education and then applying that education in Pakistan.
Because it would do the country good to have their
Absolutely.
educated young people come back, right?
Absolutely.
It would serve everybody.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
And,
I can
and the other interesting thing is that when you go to different places and experience how people solve problems which are common to people. So if we think about the problems that we have as societies, or as any even if it's not a problem, but just a task that needs being done, different cities and different countries will approach it differently based on their cultural context, based on their skill context, and a lot of other aspects. And just having exposure to that, and then coming back and analyzing how you are approaching problems in the place that you have grown up in, kind of gives you that new perspective on things. And then you are actually able to say, identify, hey, why are we doing it this way? You know, there's another way to do it, which could be better. And so it really is very important for people who go out and experience things from new perspectives to go back and then kind of feed into the learning of the society, in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I'm just going to switch topics if you don't mind. Something about you mentioned in one of your messages to me is about smart cities. So tell me about smart cities and what exactly does that mean?
So the way, a little bit of context on that. I have been involved. I mean, I didn't tell you what my field of work or study is.
No, that's right.
My field of study is system on chip design, which is essentially designing IC chips that go into your laptops, in any automated machines, into your appliances, into satellites, into cars, right? And I've also worked on strategy before for big companies. So where you look at emerging technologies and see how those technologies can contribute to new and innovation within the company and to the customers. And so through that, I got involved in smart city related applications. And the definition of smart city has evolved over time. Initially, it was started by IBM, I think in 2008. And essentially, the idea was to just use technology to solve problems that cities face, right?
Yeah.
And that definition has evolved over time, because initially it was just too focused on technology. So it was technology first. So if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So it used to look at different problems in the city from the lens of technology and say, how can I use technology to solve this problem? And the way it has shifted now is it's people first or sustainability first, where you approach problems from the angle of people, and then you see if there is a space for technology to contribute, right? And it's a subtle difference. A lot more often than not, it's a subtle difference, but it is very important because you can incorporate principles into the solutions by design, which are people-centric rather than technology-centric. So it's been a topic of interest for me, and so I've spoken about it before in different conferences, Interestingly, recently I got an opportunity to speak about it in the climate fair that was arranged by the climate committee by Rotary. But interestingly, when I was introducing smart city to the audience there, my first question was, who knows what smart is? And everybody raised their hand naturally. And then I said, who knows what smart city is? And very few people raised their hand.
Right.
And it's very interesting because we know what smart means and we know what city means. But when you combine them together, it's very difficult to determine what would make something smart, right? Like how to, when you think about a city, just getting a perspective on what a city is, right? Or what is the definition of a city will then give you an indication of where you need to put the smartness, right? And so I think there's it's kind of a cross section of technology meeting urban design.
Right. Now you mentioned the Rotary Club Climate Committee. Now, are you part of the committee?
So I have been pulled into the climate committee. I'm not part of the Rotary yet, but I am part of the Rotary's climate action community, climate action group. Yeah.
Because it's something that I think about a lot. It is so important, and I just feel that we human beings can be so stupid. Sorry, but
it's true.
Yeah. It's like we're determined to destroy the planet, yet we worry about it at the same time. But are we worried enough to actually do something? And I just feel that, well, this is going to sound politically incorrect, but I think that the wrong people are in charge. Because we can't wait to 2030 or So
yeah.
What does the climate control, the climate committee club, or what do they do? Like, what is their platform? What is their agenda?
It's called Climate Action Group.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Climate Change Action Group, CCAG. And essentially the idea is that instead of being, so I'm not an official spokesperson. I guess you've spoken to Robin before. But the idea is that we've wasted a lot of time just bickering about what it is and what it is not, and how true it is or how false it is, and just like closing our eyes to it or opening our eyes to it.
Yeah.
And the idea here is that because Rotary Club or International has put climate action as one of their principles, and so for all the Rotary clubs all over, they have to then take action on this. And then once you rise above that noise, and then you try to figure out what you can do based on facts and information and data, that can help.
Right.
And actually, there's two aspects of not doing anything. So you mentioned human stupidity, right? But a lot of the times there are people who are well-meaning and who want to do things, but unfortunately human beings underestimate the impact of something in the long term, and they overestimate the impact of something in the short term. Right? And for people who have to appeal to masses and have to appeal to the crowd, it is much more easy to base their argument on something that has a short-term impact, as opposed to something that requires a long and honestly very difficult journey to get to a point.
Right. Now,
the interesting thing here is that the Earth is agnostic to species.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing that I usually say, but what I mean to say is the Earth doesn't really care about what species survives, right? The Earth has to maintain an equilibrium, right? So in the ecosystem, if you think about the Earth, it's a closed system where you can't go out of it. So for instance, if you bought something in the grocery store and you ate part of it and threw the other part, it doesn't just go away. It stays in the system and it has to go around, right? So there's so many cycles like in the ecosystem, in the world, in the globe. And so I kind of digressed a bit and lost my train of thought, but
I do that all the time.
But what I mean to say is that when you think about when you think about the circularity of material and the circularity of things that are in the system, you have to be very mindful of what you use and where you throw it, as opposed to like just forgetting it when you throw it away. And then at the same time, if you don't do that, then the earth itself, for its own survival, has to maintain balance in nature. So if you have seen documentaries about Yellowstone National Park, where they introduced wolves into the national park, and that changed a very huge different aspects in that ecosystem, right? Yeah. So when we say a species is getting wiped out, so let's say something gets extinct, right? It's not just an impact on that one thing, but it has impacts all over, right? Because things are interconnected. Yeah. And so when I say that Earth is agnostic to what species survives, it just tries to achieve equilibrium within its systems, right? And so we just have to make sure that we are not kind of collateral damage in the Earth's striving towards an equilibrium in the systems.
We're the one causing the imbalance. Yeah, in my opinion, I just think about things like we just talk about the forest fires, for instance, that are happening, in Alberta, where it's especially bad. And you talk about, the nature, everything or every being or every plant, whatever that needs those trees are affected, right? And then the ripple effect, but why do we have all of these forest fires? Well, we have the climate change and again, I think we're the cause of that. But, one of the things that I find that for people of my age, my generation, a lot of them are just, they say this all the time, but what can we do? We're only one voice. But the problem is trying to convince them that you're one voice connected to this voice and this voice and this voice, like so on, has a huge effect, right?
Yeah. And I also look at it from a different perspective as well. So I come from Pakistan, so I guess you probably might have guessed that I am Muslim, and through my religion and the lessons of spirituality that we learn, it is not you don't base your actions on what outcome you will see. You base your actions on a very individualized filter that is on your personal level, where you have to, the only thing that you have to answer when you glance through your life is what actions did I do and what intention did I do them with. Now, it's not you can try your best, you can put in your best foot forward, but it's not in your control what outcomes might come, right? So throughout history, we've seen people who are very well-meaning and they might have caused a lot of trouble, right? Not actually knowing that that's what they were doing. And then you might have seen people who were trying to do something bad and actually something good came out of it. But essentially the idea here is that when you are deciding your actions, you base them on your best judgment and your best understanding of the situation, but you go in with good intention. And then you leave whatever is after that, that's out of your power, you leave that to God. And so even in terms of climate action, I know that a lot of people who are involved in this, they get climate anxiety, because they think that the scale of the problem is so big that I'm not able to make any difference, right? And so one thing, as you mentioned, when we combine together and we act together, we are able to do that. We are able to make an impact. But at the same time, the way I see it a little more spiritually, in that I'm not responsible for the overall effect that it will have eventually. as long as I've done my part.
Okay, one of the things, I mean, I don't disagree with you. One of the things you mentioned is like when people do things but don't realize the effect it's negatively or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think like we don't have that excuse anymore because the information is out there, and you know, we all have the opportunity to look or talk to other people, or you know, people who might know a little bit more, whatever. So I don't like people using that if they do as their excuse. Oh, I didn't know. You know, like in my building now, we have to recycle. We have our composters, and we have our recycle bin and our garbage bin. And our garbage bin is so much less now than it ever used to be because we're able to recycle all these things, you know. That's downstairs in our parking arcade for everybody. So if somebody doesn't use it, they can't say they didn't know because it's
so that's why the first point is you put your best foot forward, you act as best as your judgment is at that point. And then after that, when the outcome of it becomes more on a global level rather than a local level, then you say, you know, I did what I could have done best locally. And actually, this is very interesting because a lot of the times, actually, I was having a discussion with someone yesterday while we were going to Lytton for where they had the forest fire recently. So a few of our climate action group, we went to Lytton to attend a symposium. And so in the car, we were having these discussions, and this really knowledgeable gentleman was telling me that he was going all the way to Ottawa, wanting to do something good and have an impact.
Right.
And eventually, after trying for a while, he realized that it didn't have to go all the way. He rather had to do something in his local community. And so it's very important to think global, but act global. So, because that's the best place to start is local, right?
Yeah.
And just a little bit of a digression here. You mentioned a little bit about recycling, and it's just an example. But just for your viewers, I would like to highlight that recycling is the last stage of doing good. So a lot of the good that we have to do comes before recycling in material flow. So there's an organization called Zero Waste B.C, and they talk about this very beautifully. And the whole idea is that by the time you reach the recycling part, the impact you can do is pretty low. So we have to do wiser choices and take wiser decisions before we get to that stage.
Right. Sorry, I'm just getting a notice there that we're going to run out of time soon.
Yeah,
so I was a little distracted, but you're absolutely right. Of course, we have to learn how, you know, like what I believe in is like sharing. Like if I've got something and it's more than what I need, you know, I'm going to share it with either my daughter or my sisters or, you know, a neighbor, right? And then I don't have to throw, you know, because when you live alone, which as I do, it's hard to shop for one person. Small portions are not out there very well.
Yeah.
So I can shop with my daughter or you know, or some family member, right? And that's good for everybody to do something as simple as that. And that way you're not throwing away half a loaf of bread or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one simple way. I'm not sure now if we covered everything because I don't want to run out of time in the middle of a conversation. It's happened to me before. Now, did we talk about everything you wanted to mention?
There's one thing that I would like to highlight because we've been talking a little bit about climate action. And the way I approach climate action is I kind of combine both my expertise, my expertise and my passion. Yeah. And so I want to do good, but I also want to be able to use my technological background. So I look at climate action on a city level.
Okay.
The reason for that, quite simply, is that the human urban population is increasing. It's around 50%, 55% right now, and it's we are expected to go to 75%. 75% are close to 80% of the resources in the world are used in urban environments. 60 to 80% of greenhouse gas emissions are produced in urban environments. And if we continue to use resources by this rate, by 2032, we're going to need another Earth.
Yeah.
And so if we don't change fundamentally how we design our cities and what habits and what decisions we take on in our urban systems, it's going to be very difficult to do anything about climate change. And so that's why I look at cities as a system of subsystems where each subsystem needs to have a correlation and causation effect with other subsystems in the city, and then see how, on a holistic level, how does one system impact another. So I'll give you an example. In North America, cities are designed for cars. So car is the primary citizen, right? First-class citizen. Human is a second-class citizen in the city design. And if you do that, then you give the people a circumstance where they need cars to meet their very basic needs, right? That also makes health a problem. You have to spend a lot on healthcare because people's lifestyle becomes so sedentary, and that causes a lot of problems there, but also mental health, because walking and being able to see people on the street or in a communal place is very good for mental health. But if you're just in your car going there and coming back, you don't actually interact with your community. So there's these holistic system level effects that one single decision in one single subsystem has. And so that's why when I talk about system level considerations on city design, that's why I talk about that, because there are these impacts all over.
Very good. Okay, we're going to end it there. But I just want to say to everybody before we sign off, let's make Chilliwack a smart city. Right?
Absolutely.
So thank you everybody for watching the show. My guest has been Farhan Papin, and I really appreciate you being here, Farhan, and to stay on cameras. So I just want to say goodbye to everybody, and I hope you enjoyed what the information that Farhan shared with you. I certainly did, and it's educational too. And it's, we need to listen to other people who have more knowledge than we do. It's always a good experience. So
thank you for having me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Take care and peace out.
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see.